I've often been accused of hating Christmas. Nothing could be further from the truth. The only difference between me and the rest of you is that Christmas for me is just another day. There's no magic in it. Fucked up things can happen to you just the same as any other day or time of the year. One of my earliest Christmas memories is of me at about 6 years old. It was a week before Christmas, 1980-something, in a small one-bedroom apartment between the Chinese restaurant and the locksmith on Martin Luther King Avenue in Southeast D.C. My brother Titus and I, having recently been left with and then taken from our grandmother Doris on our mother's side of the family, found ourselves living with our Aunt Tina, my mother's sister. We were packing up to go visit Grandma and Pi for the holiday. Titus and I have different fathers, and technically, Pi was his grandmother, but at the time, I couldn't have made the distinction. When I heard the news that we were visiting her, I had mixed emotions. I was not a fan of adventures or strangers. I knew nothing about her save her name. All I had was flickers of memories of her. On the car ride over, my Aunt Tina was crying and sobbing the whole way. When I asked her what was going on, she said that they were tears of joy, but I knew better. I also knew that it wasn't my place to keep asking, so I let it go. As we moved past the urban sprawl that was Washington, D.C., and into the suburbs of southern Maryland, I was in awe of the houses. I'd never lived in one before, and they were just so far apart, and the ones in D.C. were all small and tightly packed together. It was like we crossed into another world. The thing that stuck out the most to me was the street corners. They were empty in the suburbs. No bus stops, no police, no hustlers rolling dice, nothing. When we arrived at Grandma and Pi's house, Aunt Tina let us out of the car and walked us to the door. And then she gave me a goodbye hug that was so tight that I could barely breathe. She was acting like she'd never see us again. As I crossed the threshold into Grandma and Pi's house, I knew that we'd been there before because adults seem to always exclaim surprise at the fact that a small child can't remember things like their diaper being changed by them at 6 months, or that they were there when you were born. Grandma Pi was a foster parent, and as a result, her house was chock full of children. 6 of them altogether, not including Titus and I. I remember thinking, I just know she's rich because she has cable and more than one Nintendo. I remember thinking then, and still to this day, that she could cook better than anyone. Dinner on Christmas Eve was amazing. I'd never seen so much food. Endless sweet rolls and candied yams, perfectly seasoned collard greens, mashed potatoes, cornbread. It seemed as if she was attempting to cook enough food for the whole neighborhood for the whole month. And the tree, holy shit, the tree had so many gifts under it, I thought we were some kind of pre-staging area for Santa Claus. Another detail I couldn't help but notice is that a good number of the gifts had my name on them. I remember thinking, hell yeah, this visit is going to be one to remember. Christmas Day was a chaotic mess. There were piles of wrapping paper stacked as high as the tree itself. The house was full of noise from the competing sounds of freshly opened boom boxes, speaking spells, and remote control cars. Grandma and Pa seemed to be getting more and more annoyed as the day went on. But we made it through without a hitch. Besides, I was too busy helping my new Snake Eyes kick Destro's ass with his grappling hook to give 2 shits about Grandma and Pa's attitude. The next morning, something started to become increasingly apparent to my 6-year-old brain. Pi was a meanie. As the holiday cheer began to fade, it seemed like every single moment of every single day she was looking for something to scream at me about. Not just me, she terrorized all the kids. The sound of her heavy steps of doom walking towards your bedroom was never likely to result in you getting anything but an ass whipping, or at the very least, a coupon for an ass whipping that could be redeemed at any time. She would go through my drawers looking for clothes that weren't properly folded. She complained about how fast or slow I was eating. Oftentimes, it seemed like my mere presence was enough to set off the ticking time bomb that was Grandma Pi. She was a staunch disciplinarian and a firm believer in the old adage, A child is to be seen and not heard. In Pi's house, every decision was final and every punishment was indefinite. This was a shock to my system because I'd come from a household in which I was encouraged to speak my mind and did so almost reflexively. I had a revolutionary complex back then. This combined with my patented stubbornness in the face of injustice made quite the recipe for disaster. This couldn't possibly end well. I remember her exclaiming to me on many an occasion, "Nigga, I'm getting tired of you running off at the goddamn mouth. I'm about to forget who you are in a second." This roughly translates to, "Child, your piercing wit just may frustrate me to the point of temporary dementia. At that point, I just may begin to see you as a deserter or a communist spy and take delight in beating you down as though it were my patriotic duty." I was completely miserable. I was sick of being yelled at all the time. I hated the house, I hated the rules, I hated the atmosphere, and most of all, I hated the other kids. Again, there were 6 others altogether, all varying degrees of annoying, but this story need only concern itself with one. The most evil of them all, Nicki. Nicki was the only kid in the house that was Grandma Pi's biological child. She was well aware of this fact and didn't hesitate to remind the rest of us of it incessantly. She was only 12, but even at that age, she'd inherited quite the mean streak from her mother. Nicki took delight in the suffering of others. It was as if she drew energy from her maniacal bad guy laugh. She was basically the good son with a vagina. The only thing Nicki liked more than laughing at the pain of others was causing the pain of others and then laughing at them. She once planted a bag of Jolly Ranchers in my sock drawer so that her mother would find it and think that I'd been sneaking the good shit out of the pantry. Part of my punishment was to do leg lunges all day, every day, for a week in front of the pantry until bedtime. The other part was Pi thoroughly demonstrating to me that she could indeed forget who I was for a second. It was then that Nicki chose to reveal her entire evil plot, laughing the whole while. I hated that fucking Cobra Commander Skeletor cackle of hers. The day came when I just couldn't take it anymore. I'd gone from being the baby of the family in my small little 3-person household to being just another child in a herd of rugrats. I was ready to go home. I knew that we'd leave eventually, but I was determined to expedite the process. I figured if I pissed her off enough, she'd be itching to send us home. We were only supposed to be there for a couple of weeks, and we were running a little over that anyway. My mind was made up. I was defiant. I went to the top of the stairs in the middle of the house, figuring it was the best place for everyone to hear me from, and I yelled out loud, "I hate this house. I can't wait to go home." Just then, at the bottom of the stairs, appearing out of a thick cloud of black smoke and hellfire, chuckling like a fucking James Bond villain, was Nicki. Of course she wanted to be the one to burst my little bubble by delivering what at the time seemed to me to be the worst news I would ever receive in my entire life. She said, "You are home. You guys live here now." She might as well have slammed the dungeon door afterwards. If this were a movie, this would have been the time to scream, "No!" and have it echo from the rooftops and then the city and then outer space. Life story spoiler alert. This would not be the last time that a woman in my house laughed maniacally at my temporary loss of sanity. I hoped with every fiber of my 6-year-old being that she was just lying to get a reaction out of me. But her bad guy laugh was simply too sincere to ignore. I raced to find Titus to see if it was true. I had so many questions. Why would we be staying here? Was this planned? Did he notice before I did? Was I the only one that didn't know? None of his answers were good answers. We were stuck in this hellhole indefinitely, and I thought we were just visiting for the holiday, lured by good food and good gifts. This would be my first of 11 abrupt moves from foster home to family member and back again, and the first of many shitty Christmases. The whole point of me telling you this story is so that you will understand that I don't hate Christmas. I just see it for what it really is. A poison pill on society. Perfectly designed to leave you broke and broken. When I seemed angry around the holidays, it isn't simply because it's Christmas. It's because you fucking Christmassy types insist on shoving that shit down everyone's throat like it's a panacea. When the truth is, everything on the 25th is the same as it was on the 24th. To me, Christmas is just an emotional Trojan horse that I refuse to let in. On second thought, you know what? Maybe I do hate Christmas. And maybe you're right. Maybe I need to lighten up. Maybe I need to see the silver lining. And if you really paid attention to the story, then maybe you'll see that the Christmas day was actually awesome. And maybe, with my new Destro doll in hand, I slid down that banister and drop-kicked Nicki in her laughing fucking face. But that's a story for another day. Happy holidays.
Give it up for little Brian Simpson.